Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Sam Bryan Asks His Friends. And today, a very special one. We've gone stateside. We are joined by my friend Luke Neville, who is an English man and then moved to New York. Obviously, we'll get into that. Luke, how are you doing? All right?
I'm good. How are you, Sam?
Oh, really good, really good. And it's lovely to see you. Off camera, me and Luke were just talking about how we haven't seen each other for 5 years, which is
5 years.
ridiculous.
It's kind of tragic, really. I'm really heartbroken that it's taken this for us to catch up.
Yeah, it's only taken a global pandemic and people to not see their family and friends for 4 months to reach out.
I'm finding that with like everyone though, like my mum, my dad, and my sister. We were talking the other day. We FaceTimed more. Considering the 4 of us live, like me and my sister live in London and New York, like we FaceTimed more in this pandemic than we have normally. I was like, it's literally taken us to have like an international pandemic for us to be like, should we play Cards Against Humanity on Zoom?
Yeah.
We're like, we never do this.
It would be nice to each other for an hour.
Truly.
So let's start from the beginning. Luke, you were born, you were brought up in Portsmouth, is that right?
That's true, yeah.
And then moved to Durham.
That is correct.
So
Sam, I'm so scared. I feel like you're like, this is like an FBI interview.
No, it's all right.
Like, what are you going to unveil?
No, I wouldn't worry. It's going to be fairly benign. So what inspired that move for your family? Because that's a long way away from...
It's a long stretch. I believe in like 1998, my dad has always worked in sports. He's always worked in like management of like sports companies as well as like health and fitness clubs. And I believe it was a company, he worked at a health and racket club in Southampton. And then he was the general manager of that. And then they were building a new one up at Doxford Park, which I think it was the Sunderland Health and Racket Club. Then it was sponsored by Esporta, and then I think Virgin took it over. So like, yeah, we moved up so my dad could manage the Northeast Health and Racket Club, and we moved to Sherburn Village, and I grew up there. So I was about 3 or 4 when we moved up. So I don't really remember the move, but yeah, that was what inspired it. My dad's job.
Are both of your parents from down south?
Yeah. Both me and my sister were born in Portsmouth, and my mum and my dad are born and raised in Portsmouth. So like all my family are Southerners. We're kind of like Northern traitors. I claim to be Northern, but really you've unearthed a secret that I'm not a Northerner. I'm a Southerner technically.
I think if you did the other route, if you went north to south, you'd be called a traitor to your class. That sort of springs to mind.
I sort of straddled the two regions there, like.
So I met you obviously when we were at stage school together. Has musical theatre, obviously you're now a working actor in America, but has musical theatre and theatre as a general just always been a part of your life?
I mean, as you can tell, I'm not really shy and retiring. So I think I always had a love of performance and like film, TV, theatre, that what have you. But it really wasn't until I must have just turned 16, and one of my best friends from secondary school, Jenny, she was at stage school, Gala Theatre Stage School. And I remembered she would talk to me every September after the summer show about this experience that she'd had at Gala Theatre Stage School, and it just always sounded so appealing. And at the time, I really wanted to work in the fashion industry. This was like, I was like 15. I just always wanted to work in the fashion industry. And she said, well, they're going to be doing Les Mis the next summer. You should come in because they're looking for more boys to come in. So I was 16 by this point, and it was 2011, I think. And so, yeah, I came in then. And we met, I think, that first year. I must have like known you around that time.
Yeah,
it must have been 2011, 2012, 2013. It was like around that time that we all sort of like ended up in the melting pot.
Yeah, Les Mis was my first proper show there. So
well, yeah. So it's like, it's mad, isn't it? I mean, like that. So technically it was quite late, I guess. Like so many of my friends were like, at the age of 3, I was tap dancing. I wasn't. I really didn't start until I was like 16. So it's always been kind of a love, but then now it's like a true love. Like I truly found what I love at 16 years old doing that show with you and like the whole gang. It was just the best.
So, and your first role in theatre then was Thénardier in Les Mis.
It was at 16 years old. And I look no different. I still look, I think I've grown more into Thénardier. I think now, like, there's not much, like, costume or hair and makeup that needs to be done. I am balding, and thankfully I've still got all of my teeth. But yeah, so that was my first ever role. That was my first ever time on stage, first ever time in a rehearsal setting. It was amazing, yeah. I mean, I can't really complain about that sort of first go.
Yeah, not bad. Was there a moment, do you think, was it that show that like set you off to head towards theatre, or was it later on? Obviously, you've done lots of shows with numerous companies and colleges and that sort of thing since then.
Yeah, I think it was something that just clicked into my life. I mean, I joined because of a recommendation, and then I think that sort of like I didn't know what an audition was, so my first audition was sort of uninhabited. Like I had no sort of restrictions or self-deprecating thoughts at that point. I just sort of auditioned, which is kind of the best way to do it. I mean, I wish I always felt like that in my auditions. But I think it was I truly got what Jenny would always talk about at school in September, about this like summer of camaraderie and this family feel and it being like a team effort. And I mean, a show like Les Mis, which is like a 4 hour, no, it's not 4 hours, like a 2.5 hour sort of journey, you really have to be all together, working together. And I love that aspect of it. And I think that's what really drew me in. But there was also like a really cool thing in that my family on my dad's side live in Hong Kong, and I have a lot of family down south. And around the time it was my mum's birthday, like a big, I think it was her 40th birthday, and she'd had it above in the studio above the theater, so they all came to see the show, and then they all came upstairs, and there was just something about like this family, it was a big family moment. And I think that to me was like, hey, if I could make money and this could be a career and offer something that I love, then let's do it. Because yeah, I completely fell in love with it, and I mean, I'm still doing it, so it's kind of
it's worked all right for you then. Yeah,
I think there's some people in my family that are like, please make it stop. Like, no.
So from then, talk about 2 beast roles. Like, for example, my first shows, obviously I'm one of those. I started musical theatre at 5 years old. And obviously you're just there smiling and waving at that sort of age. But your first 2 roles, obviously I've just mentioned Thénardier, and then John in Miss Saigon.
Yeah, I mean, those were the great thing about those shows was that they were shows that were so far away from where we grew up. But I think my biggest love of theatre and what I sort of discovered with doing roles like this as a teenager was that you really have to see the world from another perspective in circumstances that you were never in. So I think it's a complete moment of suspend disbelief. Like, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, find the thing that connects the two of you. And I didn't really necessarily have to do that. I think it was more, no, what is this person going through? And yeah, I think as a teenager, again, you have like less thoughts, self-deprecating thoughts. And I think like the more I've trained, the worse I've gotten, the more I'm like, you can't do this. Whereas as a teenager, I was like, yes, I can play a soldier. Yes, I can play a grumpy innkeeper in France.
Yeah.
It's like, sure. Now I'd be like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. What I always loved about Stage School, the gala as well, was that like they were really good quality shows, and really enjoyed them for that. But for the age of people, like the shows were real beasts. Like obviously we just mentioned those 2.
They were massive.
Yeah. When we just mentioned Les Mis there, obviously a huge classic, and I hope this doesn't make you feel old, but I was 12 when we did Les Mis. And it's like, do you want to be like, do you want to act like you're in the chain gang? Do you want to be like a starving villager? And it's like, and then going into...
It's kind of great. I mean, like, Yeah, like people all, I love it when like so many, I mean, that's just kind of a thing as actors in general, where we're all going, do you remember playing like one of the lovely ladies at the age of 15-year-old? I'm like, that is, that's like so out there. But if you think about it, even like the nativity, the nativity is literally about immaculate conception. And we're like 5-year-olds playing like this nativity scene. I love it. I think it's hilarious, but you know,
Yeah.
you've got to be careful.
Yeah, to be honest, I've never really thought about that. The most amazing thing to possibly happen in human history, and it's like 4-year-olds going like, "And the star in the sky."
I mean, it's very innocent, and of course, they all have lovely messages. But I do love the idea that there's like, if you break it down, it's like a show about immaculate conception played by 4-year-olds. How iconic!
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the turmoil that Mary must have been under to know that she was carrying the Christ.
Yeah, I love the idea of like there being like some really big shot director like really like getting into it with these kids, being like, I want you to really channel this turmoil that she's going through, or you know, the journey, the
Yeah.
sluggish journey on the back of that donkey.
I've
Nah, it
selected
wasn't
some
that for me.
reading. I've selected some good reading that you might want to look over.
Finish the Bible by Friday, or don't bother coming to rehearsal.
So from there, again, getting a good call out, you moved to Newcastle College
I did.
and worked in some really good shows there.
Yeah, that was a really fun 2 years. I mean, again, I think I had a lot of friends as I finished up sixth form that did the BTEC course at Newcastle College, and they got some training under their belt. And I think by that point, I'd made the decision that that was what I wanted to do now. So I finished up sixth form and felt somewhat ready, but not really ready for like a big move to like a city or, you know, a regional drama school. So a lot of my friends had recommended Newcastle College, and I went there for the 2-year foundation course, which was, I would like, some of the best years of my life. It was just so much fun. And I mean, incredibly hard work, as I'm sure you know. But it really laid the groundwork, and I understood some things in a bigger perspective that we'd done at Gala. Like they sort of went hand in hand. Like Newcastle taught me the training at the sort of base level of what it is to perform, and then I got to apply it every summer that we went back to Gala. So it was kind of this really incredible sort of union of training that was like invaluable. It was just, I still like think about most of the stuff that we did and learned today, you know, even after having gone to another drama school.
Yeah, there's a lot of people can never understand when I try and explain Newcastle College. They go like, "Oh, you're doing musical theatre, so you say singing, dancing, da da da." It's like, yeah, that's it.
That's it. Sure.
That's exactly what we're doing. It's not getting
but
there
I really, and it
half
really,
8 in the morning, like for fitness. It's not staying till 6 at night, 7 at night. It's not like basically spending like 12 hours in a theatre, not seeing the light of day. It's just singing and dancing. That's it.
it's insane. I mean, I mean, truly, like the two leaders of those programs, like Gala Theatre, obviously you've got Kate Sarahan, who was the artistic director and also the director of Stage School, and Carly Woodhouse, who at the time was the course leader at the Academy and taught jazz and contextual studies and directed the shows. And I mean, the two of them, I mean, like, are two of like the biggest cornerstones of my training, because it was, like I said, that union and the intensity of both these things, because Kate's productions are so huge and require so much work, which is a great thing to have as a teenager. And then Carly's sort of packed schedule of that training. I mean, you can't complain about like, especially on perspective, when you leave and you graduate these things, you sort of look back and go, holy hell, I've learned so much, you know? So I really can't knock the intensity of either of those things. But at the time, you're right. Those 8 a.m. ballet classes, if you don't think I shed a few tears while doing like ronde jambs, like you're wrong, because I would just be at the bar with like my friend Maddie, just like single tear.
Yeah. What I've sort of had the same process of you with looking back, and you don't realize at the time that you're working under two real powerhouses in those two women. They like, I'm like, it's obvious to say they really know what they're doing, but it just, I don't think I couldn't give either of them enough credit. They really are.
No, and especially in the Northeast. I mean, like the Northeast has such a great theater community now, and I sort of understand the expanse of it now. But to me, it felt like I was working under these two women that were like defining theater in the Northeast and what it meant to train and what it meant to perform. Like now, I mean, I felt lucky at the time, but now I feel incredibly lucky, and as I'm sure you do, and many of the alum do, of like what it is to train under them, because it just was it's I still think about some of the things they've taught us and carry that forward, especially in some of the gigs that I do I've done since. Yeah, it's like it's incredibly overwhelming to look back, but again, I think that's like perspective is the same for anything, isn't it? Like we look back and we go like, if only I'd taken a moment. But you don't, you just go, especially with a schedule like Carly's. You don't have time to go like, I'm so appreciative. You're like, no, contextual studies, jazz, ballet, rehearsals.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, that's it. It's just a crazy schedule, and it's something that I really don't think we're seeing it in the media at the moment. People aren't really appreciating how much actual graft goes into arts and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's an argument for a different day.
That's a 4-hour long
yes
podcast series that we can unpack another day.
That's my new documentary that I'm going to bring out in the coming weeks.
Oh, don't. Someone will buy it, man.
From Newcastle, you moved to New York City. You went to study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I've wrote down a couple of the alumni, because if anyone's looking, go and have a look at this school, because the names coming out, you've got Paul Rudd, you've got Danny DeVito, you've got Adrian Brody, you've got Anne Hathaway, you've got Grace Kelly, and the late Don Rickles, one of my favourite comedians, which I was...
So good.
Yeah, and you don't look a million miles away from Don Rickles, Luke. I'm thinking about it now.
I hope not like towards the end of his career.
No, I'm talking when he was in the Navy. Right? Yeah, I'm talking when he was in the Navy, when he was hanging around with Sinatra.
I'm just going to sit for the rest of this podcast being like, just going to slowly peel back my skin.
Yeah, but the amount of talent that came out of that school, what is that like? Not even just to be training there, but to be in the middle of New York as an English lad from a little town in the Northeast. They couldn't be anything further from what you've been.
I mean, it was a jump, and I got offered my place at the school in my second year at Newcastle College, and sort of I'd been recommended by a friend of mine, Billy Aiken-Tyers, who actually grew up in Concert, who had gone to the school. She recommended that I audition. She's now one of my closest friends, and I sort of like found it funny and was like, okay, well, I'm going to be in London auditioning for drama schools anyway. They come over and they do these auditions. Let's just give it a go. I auditioned and got offered the place around October of that last year, and spent the whole year sort of thinking about how big this was and how big of a jump it was going to be, how much of an adjustment it was going to be. But there was just this innate feeling that felt like it was the right move for me. We had visited New York whilst at Newcastle College. We went in our first year. Carly took us all on a field trip, and we stayed there for a week. And while I was out there, I had the feeling of, this feels a bit like a dream, just something that felt good about like being there and maybe not coming home. I mean, of course, anyone feels that way with New York. It's such a magical place. So I just sort of try to tap into that feeling. And as I continued to audition for drama schools in the UK, the more and more pull towards New York. And as we sort of figured out the finances, which was a tricky part of it, and other things, we decided to go. And I mean, it was a huge adjustment. I mean, the pace alone was just insane. I was living in first year at the Academy in Midtown Manhattan, which is just like no other. You couldn't pay me to live there right now. You just couldn't. But it was like living in Piccadilly Circus. It was insane. But I do feel like I was set up to go. I feel like the training I'd had and having gone through this rigorous schedule before, I didn't feel as jarred as I think a couple of my fellow students did coming straight from high school in America to New York City. I felt there was like an openness that I had to go. which I think allowed me to sort of just roll with the punches of it. There wasn't really a moment that sticks out to me that felt jarring. I just sort of like, if something came my way, I would sort of run with it. If it went a different direction, okay, adjust and go. I think is the best way to approach any drama school, really, but especially like moving to this bigger city, that was like definitely something. But it was, I mean, no matter how you look at it, it was a huge leap across an ocean, literally. I wish it was easy as leaping, but no, I did. It was very overwhelming.
So what's the training like when you were there?
It was intense. And I mean, we went through this course itself went through a lot of changes in the 2 years that I was there, and it continues to change in all these different climates that we've experienced over the last 5 years. But it was like stripping everything back down to basics. I mean, a lot of people had trained there in the early 20th century. I mean, I think it's one of the oldest English-speaking drama schools in the world, definitely America, but in the world. And that's, like the alumni, especially someone like Grace Kelly, like Lauren Bacall, these sort of actresses from the golden age, that, I mean, a lot of that training was still present when I started, and it have kind of shifted gears in recent years because a lot has changed with the industry. So I was fortunate. I kind of got like their style of training, which is like dialect work. And we would do like this mid-Atlantic accent that you don't really find in film anymore, but it was very like golden age Hollywood. But all these skills were just like so invaluable because, again, it was so different from what I'd learned on a musical theater course. And it was definitely more grounded in like acting. So it was predominantly plays and theater and classical text and Shakespeare and grounding and all these methods.
Yeah.
So first year was predominantly that, and second year you apply that training to text. So that was sort of the trajectory of it. Yeah.
What I'm really interested in, because I don't think I could make a leap that you have in that sort of thing. I really am quite a home bird, especially in your first year, in your first couple of months. Did you have like did you have a few like pinch me moments? Can you remember what that felt like, where you go, oh, I'm in New York, I'm training in New York.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be here. I should be.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you brought up like moving from Portsmouth to the Northeast, because I think that just innately is in our family. Like my family are a bunch of people that travel. Like I said, my family live over in Hong Kong, and I have family in Portsmouth, family in the Northeast, different parts of the world. So that part of it made it less jarring, but I definitely had moments of pinch me. I mean, like we were living on 30th Street and Madison Avenue, which is like midtown, 4 blocks from the Empire State Building. I mean, the place, the best reference I have is in Elf, when Buddy the Elf gets hit by the yellow cab on his way into the department store. That department store is on the block of the school. So like, if you pause when he just gets hit by the car, you can see my dormitory building, like in the back of that block. It's like the other side.
Oh, wow.
So it was really like things like that. Like I would watch a film that I grew up with in like the UK, and I'd be like, oh, that's like my coffee shop. Or it was just a lot of moments like that where I'd recognize places where I was sort of running around the city and be like, oh my God, that's from Sex and the City, or that's from, like it was more like applying things like that. I think it was just, and I still do it now. If I'm out and about, I'm like, oh, I recognize that place,
That must be so strange.
It's odd. It's really odd.
Because obviously the only thing we have is Vera. If you can you even remember Vera?
That's not the only thing.
But like we watch Vera and go like, oh, that's Sal Shields, that's da-da-da. But like it must be, oh, that's, yeah, every time anyone in a film is in New York, in Times Square, when they look around and see all these things, is that, oh, that's just on my way to work?
I think sometimes, I mean, like I definitely take it for granted sometimes, but because I think you just get caught up in it. Like, especially now I'm in my 5th year. I mean, of course I haven't been in the city for the entirety of quarantine, but you just get a cut. Like, it's like anywhere you adjust and you move. And so it became normal, I guess, especially while I was at school, because I was in the same place for 3 years. Midtown became normal. Like I wouldn't look up at the Empire State Building anymore. I would go to work or school. But then when I have like a visitor, like Carly actually came and visited last year, or when my family come or when friends come, you get to see it through like a visitor's eyes, and
to
you start to realize, oh yes, we're in Midtown. Yeah, so it's only really when we have visitors. I mean, my husband has he grew up in Boston, coming down to New York all the time. So he has a complete disregard for the New York City. So he's just like, whatever, it's the city, I don't want to go in. Whereas I'm still like, like there'll be days when something cool will happen and I'm like, oh my God, this place is magical.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, you get accustomed. I guess it's like, I feel like that with London because I've never lived in London. Like London for me is somewhere when I visit that I'm like, oh wow, I still find that fascinating because I've never lived there. Whereas New York now I feel like is less so like.
Yeah. It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah, it's something that I could never really do. I'd love to visit. I've never actually visited New York, and I've told by everyone that I'd love it. From your training, you obviously have been working. What sort of projects have you been involved in since? Because obviously quite a lot, and you've been traveling. I think you came back over with your Alice, was it? Did you do Edinburgh or something with that?
Yeah, I did. So it's been a crazy couple of years. I mean, so the American Academy is a 2-year training course. So I graduated in 2017, but they do have a 3rd year, which is called Company, and they invite 20 to 30 students from the graduating class to do like a study in school but work in the industry year where you just do shows back to back. It's like a rep series. I did that, and I think that sort of set up the connections that I've had for work. So for instance, Billy, who grew up in Consett in the northeast of England, who recommended I go to the school, she was an assistant director on a musical that I did in apologies, that I did in the Company year. And since then we've worked together consistently. She's a playwright and a director, and she wrote the play Your Alice, which is a play about Lewis Carroll and him writing it for Alice Liddell, who was the girl that he based Alice on. So we did that straight out of school. We did it off Broadway at a play called a theater called BAM, and then that transferred to Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So it was really bizarre. It was getting to do this play written and directed by a Northeasterner, and we took it back to Edinburgh, which is obviously so close to home that it was really kind of this full circle moment. But yeah, so that was like the biggest gig. But that set up like connections that I've made and projects that I've done consistently for the last 2 years, which is that's really like important, I think, to me too. Like that network of friends and people and colleagues and acquaintances that we have, like those are the people that will get you through hard times in the industry, and we really are good at sort of like saying, hey, I think I have this part for you. There's not a lot of cash in it, but hey, it could one day. And I think this devoted group of people that just put their time and effort into this craft has allowed me to sort of do all these different gigs. I mean, I've traveled so much in 2 years with these shows, which is amazing. And a group of doers, which has been really nice.
You mentioned there, obviously, your husband and your husband Gino, and how did you guys meet? We've never actually had this story, so.
Oh yeah, so I met him in 2016. So I'd been in New York for just over a year, I think. We met through Tinder. Yay!
Nice.
Come on, Tin Doctor. Yeah, we met through Tinder, and we just a natural progression. We had our first date not far from my school because he had a friend who lived in the same area of Manhattan. We went for Thai food. A really romantic dinner. Lots of rice and veggies. You can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And then we dated all through my first year, but he was also at school. He was at fashion business school. And we were just a really great support system, I think, because he wasn't an actor and I don't work in the fashion industry, but he really appreciates theater and I really appreciate fashion. First and foremost, we became like really good friends and then dated, and were great support systems while we were at school. And then we got married in 2018, and now we're shacked up in, in Queens, surviving an international pandemic together. But we've been together coming up almost five. In March it will be the 5 years. So yeah, it's mad.
How has he been in helping
Married
you sort
old
of?
man.
Nice. How has he been in helping you settle into America and figure America out?
I think again his nonchalant sort of attitude to New York City has definitely like grounded me both as an actor and as a human being, because it takes the overwhelm out of it. You know, like sometimes when I'm going to an audition or I'm in New York City and I have those feelings of like, oh, this is huge and this city feels massive and I recognize this place and so worked here and I should be up here. He's very good at being like, why shouldn't you do that? Why is that overwhelming? Like, is it really? It's just a building. And you're like, true.
And it is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, kind
So
of
he
is.
definitely is. He's a very honest, he's very honest and very helpful, sometimes unhelpful, but mostly helpful with his opinions. But they do just sometimes call a spade, you know, where he's like, you're fine. You live in New York City, you've lived here for 4 years. So he's definitely helpful in that regard, because I think he takes some of the melodrama that I like to put into situations out. He sort of diffuses me at times. Yeah.
Well, it's good to know you haven't changed.
Definitely not changed. I have a but now. I have like someone to put in between me and these and melodrama. So someone to like sort of dilute situations. I just sort of put him forward and be like, "Can you sort this out?" Great.
How have you? Not necessarily recently, because we're going to hopefully go into that in a little bit more detail. But how have you found America as an English person being there?
I mean, I've been here in really interesting times. I moved here, and the following year, the current president was elected. So America sort of took a big gulp, I think, as it sort of started confronting a lot of its systematic stuff. And same in the UK, because Brexit happened while I was in America. So I had this really interesting sort of perspective of the UK and America coming in and coming out of the two. But there's an innate characteristic that Americans have, or a lot of my friends have, where it's sort of, you can do and achieve anything. And my parents kind of have that mentality. And I don't know if it's because of their sort of travels and, you know, their outlook on the world, but they have this innate mentality of like, if you are passionate about something or you're good at something, you can make that your job, and there's not really a limit to where that goes, which I think has encouraged me, because I think, not that it's like a discouragement or you don't find that in the UK, but I think I was very British when I arrived, in that like, I do this thing, I think I do it well, I think I can make some money off it. Whereas the Americans like, no, you do it amazing, you can make money off it, it's your career, you know, it's kind of, and somewhere in the middle of that, I think, is the vista of achieving what you want in life or ambition. So I love the expanse of the US. I mean, I still haven't been to many different parts of it, but I love how different each state is. I love the sort of melting pot of people that live here. And again, it just feels so different from the village that I grew up in. And not that there's anything wrong with the village I grew up in, but it's just, I love that I come across so many different types of people in the US, and different environments. Like, there's so many different terrains as it is in America. Like, New York City is sort of a bubble, and then you go somewhere like Arizona or LA and it's, you know, desert and heat, and then you go somewhere like Illinois and it's farming country. You know, it's like, it's insane. I mean, you've just got such an expanse of different parts of the world within this one country that I really enjoy.
Do you think you're proud of America? Are you at that
No.
level where you can sort of include yourself in America now?
I don't think so. I think I feel a bit of a nomad in that regard, because really I've plucked myself out of my home country and put myself in another one. So I think the perspective is what I'm proud of. I enjoy that I'm someone who likes to learn about different cultures. And again, there's a massive shift in moving to America, but I love the idea that I would potentially move somewhere else. I don't feel like I'm grounded in this country. So proud of America is, I think, a bit of a loaded statement, especially now. I think it's hard I have pride in the human race, and I have pride in what it could be. I think we have a lot of steps to go in all countries across the world to really feel proud. I'm definitely proud to be English, and I'm proud to live here. But I don't know if I know enough, or I have lived here long enough to say that I am proud to be in America. I don't know what that means yet. I think
Yeah.
5 years is maybe
Yeah.
too soon to America. That's like waving the flag.
Yeah. You'll have a passport and a tattoo in no time, I'm sure.
Who says I haven't?
Yeah.
No, I
Who
don't.
knows? We can only see this part of it. Sorry.
I have a thigh tattoo of the American flag.
Yeah, just the whole Constitution, one big sleeve.
Oh God, can you imagine?
It would be
Not
good.
now, not now. We'll wait. Let's see what happens, eh?
So what does America, New York feel like for you at the moment? Just charged?
It feels, I think it's the first time I felt at the forefront of something. I mean, there's just so much going on right now with the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're sort of behind as a city in terms of like reopening. Like, we've just entered phase 2, and there's going to be a long process before we get to phase 3. But I think it definitely feels charged, but it feels hopeful. New York always feels hopeful, and there's like a tenacity that I think people who live in New York have, that is sort of maybe a little bit more fiery than other parts of the world, because it's everyone lives in such close proximity, that there's a hope that this can represent the world at a point, because it's just, yeah, I mean, I can see the city from my view here, and it's just, there's like a hope. It sort of represents something bigger. It's almost like what people say about Hollywood. Hollywood isn't a place, it's an idea. I think New York is also that as well. Like, New York feels hopeful, and I feel like I absorb that, especially during this pandemic, because I've been in my apartment, and in a certain part of it that I take in, this idea that we can come out of this in a better way, what is returning to normal versus moving forward look like, and I think New York feels a bit more like, no, we're ready for change. That was never what we're going to go back to. We're going to move forward and make it a better place. So yeah, I'd say New York feels hopeful. It's definitely electric at all times. I mean, it's like I said, when you have so many people in such a small radius, there's an energy at all times, and I've had friends like on certain days in Manhattan who have said like, New York feels weird today. Like, the pace feels weird. Like, your commute everyone might be aggro on your commute, or, there's an energy to New York that you sort of lean into. But throughout the quarantine, it's definitely been hopeful, because again, I think so many people have had to adjust to the fact that they don't have like outdoor space, or they can't really go anywhere, or we're all living in these shoebox apartments. There's sort of like a submission and a hope, I think. Yeah.
As an outsider, speaking of myself, like an outsider of that sort of culture, like obviously we both know where each other are from, couldn't be further from what you see, especially where you are at the moment. New York and sort of LA and even London to a certain extent, it always feels like sort of ground zero in some respect. It always feels like everything is starting there, and everything, like, it feels like an unlimited place. What was I'm trying to blow this question right. Is that how you felt going into New York, and have you fit in? Are you settled, or are you seeing it through rose tinted glasses now?
I mean, I even felt like that with Newcastle to an extent, because obviously Durham isn't as big as Newcastle, and then you move somewhere. It's just, I think my world has just sort of gotten bigger and bigger as I've moved through life. There's definitely an element of rose tinted glasses, but I think I take them on and off, like, it does feel happening, but I think a lot of like any sort of like metropolis or cityscape feels that way, and there's that in every country. There's that one place where people gather, and it's usually a city, with whether it's to do with commerce or capitalism or, you know, residence or money or economy. There's like a city, and like in New York does feel like that. So like, you know, people are sort of looking at New York, I think, for the pandemic in America, but of course the numbers are going to be different because within 17 miles you've got like millions of people. So yeah, I definitely feel like I put them on and off because again, but then I think that's part of like living in New York City. There's an overwhelm I think you can have living in a place like this where you can get it swept. You can either ride with the tide or you can get swept with it. And I think you have to kind of keep a hold of your surfboard, if we're going with this
I
wave
love it.
analogy.
Absolutely
You kind of have to, why not? I've surfed once in my life. Yeah, you kind of have to grip to the board. Whereas I think a lot of people get dragged with it, you know, because it's a lot. It's a lot to live in. And I mean, like on a bad day, it feels bad. And on a good day, it feels really good. So living in the middle is tricky sometimes because you kind of get pulled in one of the directions or not, you know.
What you hear in especially a lot of films is that cities like New York, Vegas, they are their own character in whatever movie. Like I think it was going back to Don Rickles, actually, Casino. Scorsese said that Vegas was a character in that film. Do you think that New York feels like its own character in some days?
Yeah, I think that plays into the energy aspect of it. I mean, there's like in the summer, people leave and they go to their houses upstate or the Hamptons or all these places around New York State. So the city has actually got like a stillness, which to me is like one of my favorite characteristics of New York. Like you can go into Manhattan on a weekend in the summer and it's like there's no one around. It's like the most amazing thing. But it is because it's always changing. I mean, like, you know, and I think that plays into what I was saying about, you know, you can have a really bad commute and everyone is in the same mood of like aggravation or frustration or just like irked in some way. But then there's like a real, like I walked in the Pride Parade in 2018 and like that energy and that camaraderie and that acceptance and that love was like from the city. Like, of course, the people around the Pride Parade itself were like giving you that energy. But it's almost like New York is like winking at you a little bit on some days, and on other days it feels like it's sort of holding up the middle finger, I think, at times.
Yeah, that's actually such a lovely image because I totally know what you mean about like the city giving you that little bit of momentum to keep walking, that sort of thing.
But that's where I think if you lean, like the magic of New York City, but I think you can apply this to wherever you live. I think if you lean into what that can provide you, that's like your vista, that's like the magic spot. Because if you lean into it, you will find like the happiness and the ambition and the drive and the dream and stuff that you want to find wherever you are. I think there's got to be an element of submission. There's got to be an element of, if the city's quick pace and there's hustle and bustle and it's towering, then like meet it at that level. You know what I mean? Like you can, as humans, we can meet that energy. Whereas I think if you sort of cower in the city a little bit, it's almost like a physicality. Like you just get swept under it because it's so quick and busy and the next thing. And
of course, yeah. So as a creative in these trialing times, what's keeping you feeling inspired?
I think, like everyone, I've sort of gone on this roller coaster with the industry, and you know, initially hearing the news of show closures. You know, I had 2 or 3 projects that were cancelled or postponed, and you know, but that happened on like a worldwide scale as everyone sort of readjusted. But I think the hope that got me out of the darkness of that, and I think got everyone out of it, is that theatre innately is a tenacious industry, because if you think about it historically, like it's transcended time and circumstance along with like many of the major things that we have as an essential. So I think there's a hope that, you know, theater is just going through, or art itself is going through like a new chapter phase. But I think a lot of like the group of friends I was telling you about, and the network that I've built around me, even with people at home, and Sam, you even doing this amazing podcast, like we all find ways to do and achieve, and we reach out to those that we love and care about and bring them with us, you know. And so there's hope in that, I think, because, you know, I've been knocking Zoom a lot, but then look at what it allows us to do.
Of
You
course,
know,
yeah.
it's really cool, but I mean, is it frustrating staring at your screen for 24 hours when it's 32 degrees Celsius outside? Yes, but it's still a connection in a way, you know, and
Yeah.
that's the great fortune of where we are right now in these situations, because we have communication and we have these devices that allow us to do that. So there's hope in, I think, adjustment. Like I've seen so many amazing readings and theater companies putting their fully filmed productions online. I mean, like, and making it more accessible. I mean, theater does, in a sense, hasn't felt like this accessible in such a long time. So yeah, I think that there's a tenacity that we have as an industry and as creative people that will push through anything. And again, leaning into that, I feel supported, and I feel like that's the way through it, you know, is that there will always be something going on. It may not feel like what we're used to or what we've trained for, or, you know, but there is people around us that are willing to do. And those are the people I think that will help us through this time.
I think theatre as a beast, as its own thing, has given everyone who enjoys theatre enough reasons to not like theatre anymore. It's and
Yeah.
yet people still come out of it with this
Mm-hmm.
dream and this passion, and it just shows, as we mentioned before, we can't go on without the arts.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing: music, theatre. Stephen Fry. I'm bringing up a lot of quotes today. I feel like I have been for the last
I
few,
love that
actually.
Stephen Fry.
Yeah, Stephen
I
Fry.
love a quote, Sam. Hit me with the quote.
Stephen Fry wrote a book called Mythos. It was about like Greek, like mythology and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he said that these stories of sitting around like the hearth, sitting around the fireside and telling why the sun comes up, why the grass grows, they are all, well, because that's theatre. That's the very
Yeah.
fundamentals, and the banging of drums before you eat. Those are the things that have just always been here in some regard,
But I
and
think,
will continue to be.
yeah, I mean, someone told me once that they think that theatre, the definition of theatre is a shared experience, which is what we're kind of seeking now. But people are adapting by doing things online. I mean, like my friend Billy and I just put a play out online, and it feels the same because we've communicated with people about it. We've offered something, and people have offered something in return. You know, like, and it's this exchange, it's this shared experience. That I think we, throughout anything, will always seek. Even if you're someone who doesn't go to the theater regularly, you know what that experience is. You know that you are sat amongst people sharing an experience, and the impact is different, but the intent is to have a shared experience. And I think that's, you know, what we are missing right now, but can be done in so many different ways. I just need to throw up my green tea. Wow.
Well, it serves you right for drinking green tea, to be honest. But
I know, man. I'm ready for a tequila.
you mentioned obviously these projects that have been cancelled, and that's the same worldwide. Have you been given a start date on them, or are they on hold indefinitely?
Yeah, the biggest one that I was working on whilst this happened was a new musical called Hood, which is based on the story of Robin Hood. We were supposed to be doing it at Oslo Theatre Company, which is an equity theatre house down in Florida. And we were due to start rehearsals on the 31st of March. So just when quarantine had happened, we'd finished like a 2-week pre-production workshop in New York City. It finished, and in the time between that and when we were supposed to start was when the world
Stopped.
crumbled. So we got notice from our producers pretty early that we were waiting to see what happened, and then we found out that the production has been moved from April this year to from May this year, sorry, to April next year. So fingers crossed. I mean, like, again, I think we're all in this trepidatious sort of time of not knowing when things can happen, but that was like the biggest one. But next April we are supposed to be in Florida doing the show, which is great. And
fingers crossed for that then. Fingers crossed.
Ooh, tell me about it.
Yeah, I did. So that brings it to a nice little finish, I think. Luke, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this.
Thanks so much for having me, Sam. I'm so glad we got to catch up.
I know we'll definitely have to, when I've got an amazing studio in New York, you'll have to.
If you need a location, Scott, I'm ready to go. So
amazing. We'll go and look out some puppies.
I'll pick you up from the airport soon. I'll have a sign.
I love it. Have a pint ready for us.
I think I need a pint now, like.
Yeah, it's a pint-worthy time for the human race, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, whenever it feels inappropriate to have a drink in an American time, I always just think about British time. Like right now, obviously it's 8:30 for you and it's 3:30 for me, which may be a little bit too early for a tequila, but listen, I can just lean into the British part of myself and it's 8:30, so I'm gonna have a tequila.
Last question that's just popped into my head when we've been talking about that. Is it true that like if you have 3 drinks in America that people are like, is he okay? Does he need some help?
I think so. I mean, like the drinks are strong here. Like I know that we have like trebles in Newcastle, but like you can't tell me that some of them are watered down. Like like if you have like a cocktail here, it's like strong. We have a brewery like 3 blocks away, the Evil Twin Brewery. They're amazing, and they do like their own beers and stuff. But like they're like IPAs and they're like pale ales. Gino and I the other day had like a 4-pack each, which is like 4 beers. Is like now I was 3 sheets. I was gone, and like I like to think I have pretty high tolerance, but I was like on the floor. It's not good. It's not good. Maybe my tolerance is just shot to shit. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Okay, well, this has been episode 6 of Sam Bryan Asks His Friends. Thank you very much. Thank you again to Luke. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.